Our featured guest tonight has spent the better part of his life fighting to preserve and protect the natural beauty of Mobile, Alabama, and the Gulf of Mexico. His discovery of the Clotilda is well known, but his new book, Saving America's Amazon, is his most eye-opening and possibly most important work yet. The things in this book are so very important. Frankly, I think they should be taught in schools across America. Please give a warm Weekly Show welcome to author, filmmaker, and environmentalist Ben Raines. Ben, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me, David. I'm glad to be here.
Many of our viewers know who you are from your environmental films and discoveries like the Clotilda. But what originally brought you into conservatism and the environmental research all those years ago? I mean, where did it all start?
Well, probably on a boat with a fishing rod in my hand. My grandparents actually owned a motel in Panama City on the beach, so I grew up spending every vacation there. And that had a lot to do with it. I was kind of one of those water babies, and that just persisted, through my adult life. Even when I went to college in New York City, I was actually out there fishing in the East River. And you could say I'm a failed marine biologist in some measure. That was kind of my heart's desire, and then I ran into organic chemistry, and ended up switching to film school. So it's a big change there, but.
Now, you've talked about in other places about the importance of local newspapers and local media in holding the local governments and businesses accountable for the environment. Since those things are now starting to fall by the wayside, I mean, what do we do now? I mean, is there a solution?
Well, there is, and a lot of it is sort of citizen advocacy. It's kind of a return to the 1800s. Many of the great scientific discoveries were made by just people who weren't trained or whatever. They were just out there observing the world. And so that's kind of where we are now. The media is so fractured, but we are in such communication still. And so, we can actually use the social media world for a lot of the same purposes. And that's what we're going to have to do. When the newspaper was the big force in town and in every town around America, it was kind of a one-stop shop for anybody who wanted to protect the environment. And it would be on the front page, and everybody would know all at the same time. So the challenge now is to cut through all the noise and, get to where people can care about things and appreciate the things they need to. It is definitely a challenge and a challenging environment. But that's kind of, that's why I've written the new book, Saving America's Amazon. It's sort of my love letter to this place and trying to make people care about it. And then, writ large. And just last Sunday, the LA Times ran almost the entire first chapter of the book. Now, who would have thought that Los Angeles would be running a whole chapter about Alabama? But that's kind of where we are now. So you've got to get the word out and try and reach as many people as possible.
Now, before we move on to the new book, we've got to chat about your recent discoveries. First, the Clotilda. How in the world did that happen? I mean, was this a happy accident, or were you intentionally looking for it?
Oh, no, I was intentionally looking for it. There was an accident along the way where I found the wrong ship originally. But it actually started in a really organic way. The local radio station, 106.5, Sean Sullivan had a City of Mobile historian named John Sledge on. John is expert in maritime things and architectural things. He had just written a new book about the Mobile River called The Mobile River. Sean's interviewing him about it, and John just says offhand, what would be really incredible is if we could find the Clotilda. Now, this is in 2017. So a friend of mine named Jeff Duke, who is a longtime fishing guide and used to be the outdoors guy for the Press Register, heard John on the radio, called me up and said, you should look for the Clotilda. So that was the origin. And I actually dug into the history and started reading everything. And in that, I found, the captain's journals are at the Mobile Library. And, you can see them in the digital archives and read them. They're handwritten. But reading them as a person who knows the Delta, fairly intimately at this point, from covering it and then, running charters in it, I read things in his journal that compared to the captain who sailed the ship, they didn't make sense. There was a lie about where the ship was that had prevented it from being discovered for 150 years. So cutting through that was what set me on the course. And it was definitely not an accident to find it, but it took a lot of work, and there was some heartache along the way for me.
What did you feel down there in the water or on the surface when you realized you might have actually found the actual Clotilda?
It was pretty overwhelming because by that point, as I mentioned, I found the wrong ship first, and I thought it was the Clotilda. A team of archaeologists thought it was the Clotilda, made international news, and that brought a larger team of archaeologists here with the Slave Wrecks Project. They studied the first wreck I found, and after 2 days, they knew it wasn't the Clotilda. So I had this sort of international humiliation where I had told the world I may have found the ship, and then I was the guy who didn't find it. So coming up out of the water holding the first piece that turned out to be the Clotilda, the first piece to see the light of day in 160 years. Right. Now, I was cautious. I was like, oh, brother, here we go again. But at the same time, I felt like this has got to be it. And by that point, I knew how important it was to the people of Africatown and to the world at large. And it was, I can look back on it now, and it was an incredibly powerful experience. As a journalist, it's all about doing something that matters to people, something that changes, the catchphrase you'll hear editors say is change hearts, lives, and laws. And that, it was a moment where that happened. It has changed people's lives, all over the world, because the Clotilda is this icon. It's the last slave ship. It's the last ship that brought slaves to America. So, when you look at the Clotilda, it's actually something that represents all slave ships. There were 20,000 in the 400 years of the slave trade. We've only found 13, counting Clotilda, and only one brought slaves to America, and that's the Clotilda. So for the people, the descendants of slaves everywhere, with the Clotilda, we know more about those people who were on it than we know about any other slaves in the history of United States slavery.
Oh, wow.
We know exactly where they were from. We know where they were caught, when they were caught, in Africa, who captured them. We know who sold them. We know how much they paid for them. We know who bought them. We know the ship that brought them to America. We know what happened to them when they got here. And we know where their descendants are today. There is no other slave record like that.
Wow.
So it becomes a proxy for everybody whose ancestors came here in the hold of a ship. And their stories, which are very well documented at this point, the personal stories of the Clotilda passengers, represent what happened for everybody who arrived here in chains. And so it's a really powerful legacy that is rippling out even as we speak.
Yeah, that's really, really heavy when you think about it.
It really is.
Are there any other treasures down there that we've never located or been able to excavate in this area?
Yes. Yes, the Pioneer 2, the first submarine. The Hunley was the first submarine used in battle, but the first military submarine is in Mobile Bay and has never been found.
Oh, wow.
I am trying to find it. So far, I haven't gotten very far. And that would be quite an artifact to have. The Hunley was built here in Mobile, and the reason it was built because the one I'm talking about sank the first time they took it out. They were towing it out into the Gulf to go underwater. They had the hatch open. A big wave came, filled it up with water, and it sank.
I hate to laugh at that, but that's just it is.
But that's what happened.
It's just stupidity, and you go, okay.
Yeah, and they were getting that last breath of fresh air before they went underwater, because back then, oxygen was an issue. You seal up that hatch, and there are a bunch of guys in there, and those submarines were powered with hand cranks, so they were exercising as they moved the thing. Literally, they were turning like bicycle pedals with their hands, so they're exerting, they're breathing. So anyway, that's there. There's a lot of gold here that has never been found, and pieces are found all the time. There's a famous story in the 70s. A man found a tremendous amount of gold on Fort Morgan. There are other stories you hear about gold up in the Delta. Now, I've never found a piece of gold, but that would be a lot of fun, too.
So, Ben, here's what I want to do. I want to go to a quick commercial break, pay the bills, and come back and talk about your new book and a few other things. Can you stick around?
Oh, absolutely.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
We'll be right back with Ben Raines.